That's a pretty good representation of your ambition versus achievement. If you have a shot poured in a beer mug, that doesn't look like very much. And you're like, this is nothing. But, if you spill hot tea all over yourself, it burns. So is it better to just have a tiny cup and fill it a little? Or does the cup size matter? How's it going, everyone? Coming at you from in the future.
You're in the future relative to me right now, but you're actually in the past relative to all of the listeners.
Yeah, I'm in France for anyone who's listening. I should listen to a ton of our podcasts from here and increase our France viewership.
Dude, do it. That'd be great.
Play each one like 40 times. It's like, yo, who are these people?
Speaking of knowledge and wisdom, like you could get in one of our podcasts.
Exclusively. Oh, not exclusively, actually.
Oh, actually, is the Tao Te Ching as knowledgeable as our podcast episode?
Ooh, I don't know. Let's say yes, just because this is a religious book, and also because it's great.
It's also arguably more concise than any of our episodes.
Very arguable. It is quite a confusing book. Anyway, yeah, we're talking about the Tao Te Ching today by one or possibly many people or possibly no people.
How would it be no people?
Oh, let's get right into this now. So before I read it, one of the reasons I read it was because, hey, it's older than Jesus, so that's pretty cool. I imagine like some stuff's been lost in translation along the way, but it should be still relatively unchanged. Very relatively, because I'm reading a translated version. Sorry. The story or like the mythic story to go with it, is that Lao Tzu, which means like it's like a title. It's like old teacher or something. And it's not exactly that, but something like that.
It's about that, yeah.
Was the imperial, like, he just kept the library. He like maintained the entire library in the palace. And then for whatever reason he was leaving. Do you know the reason?
I don't know. It just seemed like he was piecing out to go be a hermit. I don't know.
Yeah, pretty much. Maybe. And then he was going across the border, and the border guard was like, while you're crossing, can you write me a book or can you write down all the knowledge you learned from all those books in the library? And so he's like, all right. And so he wrote this in like a night. And then he's like, here you go. This is all the knowledge. And then he let him go through the border. That's the official story. The other ones I've heard are that maybe it was just like a group of scholars or spiritual people. Could be either one. I mean, they were sort of pretty similar back in the day. And they all got together and wrote this. And then I've also heard somewhere it's possible, I mean, obviously anything's possible with a book this old, that it was just like a composite of a bunch of different like proverbs and stuff.
Interesting.
Who knows? Nobody currently.
Yeah, I don't know how much or how close it is to the original, because I think I was looking into it a bit, and I think the oldest copy of it that we found is from around like 3rd century BC, and it was written in like the 6th century BC.
That's pretty good.
I know. We're surprisingly close to an original text.
Yeah.
I think that was written on some kind of like bamboo or some shit.
That's actually crazy. Like
yeah.
That's like two very, very old people living next to like one after the other.
Yeah, it's probably pretty close.
I like that. I didn't know that. Now I'm like, wow, this is some pretty good stuff. I mean, I was already like, this is some pretty good stuff, and I'm like, this is the good stuff that they intended to say, maybe.
Probably. Very likely. So yeah, I think we've both read this twice now.
Yeah. The version I have up here is Derek Lynn's translation, but that's not the original one I read. Which one do you have?
That's a good question. I don't have my Kindle at hand right now, but I pulled up another copy and it does not have an author on it. So there you go. That's
I like the ones that have the original Chinese next to it. Doesn't do anything for me. Could be completely wrong, but it's nice to have. So I last read this about a year ago, I think. But I read it for the first time in grade 10 or 11 in high school, and I thought it was pretty great. And I still think it's pretty great. So I recommended Aiden read it, and he did. And yeah, we both quite liked it. But Aiden's read it more recently than me, so we're just going to sort of go over some interesting bits and some confusing bits.
Yeah, I gotta say, I didn't really remember it much at all. Like, I wasn't totally sure what I was expecting. I'd forgotten most of it. It was a little whack at times, reading it again.
Like strange or like you disagreed?
A bit of a combination of both. Though I don't know if it's so much that I disagree as much as I don't fully understand what they're getting at or the context of it.
Well, that's a lot of
Yeah, that
it.
is a lot of it.
Yeah.
Especially all the bits about non-action and not knowing and how those are things that you want to do. That's given my head a little bit of a spin.
I can't find it. Maybe you'll remember the part that I'm talking about, but in I specifically remember in the translation I had, it said something about like keep the people's bellies full and minds empty.
Yeah, he's all about people keeping their minds empty and not thinking and not having knowledge, and that through not having knowledge you will become all-knowing.
Okay, here it is. Oh, it's only chapter 3. That's why I remembered it so much. I'll put that on the list because we can maybe go into it first thing. Actually, you can start.
I will just dive right into it then with one of the things that I thought was quite funny, or I don't know if I wasn't expecting to see it in here, but I really liked it when I read it, was don't be good at screwing people over. So it says, a skillful commander strikes a decisive blow and stops. He does not dare, by continuing his operations, to assert and complete his mastery. He will strike the blow, but will be on guard against being vain or boastful or arrogant in consequence of it. He strikes it as a matter of necessity. He strikes it, but not from a wish for mastery. But basically, the gist that I got was that screwing people over is essentially a skill that can be developed and you can get better at it, at like doing bad things to other people. And it is probably good to have it as a goal to not become good at it, because if you aren't good at it, then you haven't practiced it. And if you haven't practiced being bad at people, then you just don't do bad things to people very often.
Okay, that is yeah, very different from what I got from this translation. But yeah, I wish I knew which translation I had originally because I don't remember reading exactly this. But what I got from this here was more like do only really what you have to. Some things are like necessary evils, but only do them out of the absolute necessity, like absolute minimum. Like specifically the line, things become strong and then get old. This is contrary to the Tao, or this is called contrary to the Tao. So it's like becoming overly strong and like stuff like that isn't the way.
Yeah, that kind of more generalizes it away from just malicious actions.
Yeah, looking for power is not the way.
Yeah, that's a theme throughout it. That was again like something that kind of confused me, like not taking action. And even more so, what confused me was the stuff about not wanting to know and not being wise and not being intelligent.
Well, do you know another book I read at the same time that have you read Siddhartha?
I have not. No.
Okay, a book that it pairs very well with the Tao Te Ching. It's a fairly short novel by Hermann Hesse called Siddhartha. And basically, do you care if I spoil it a bit?
Go for it. Yeah, sure.
Okay, so basically, like this is the vague plot, but the book's still well worth a read, even if you know the vague plot. What the story's about is this dude named Siddhartha. He's not the Buddha, by the way, even though that was the Buddha's name. He just has the same name. He's like a rich man's son, and he's a pretty good life, but he's like looking for like depth, looking for meaning, like enlightenment. So he goes about it. He brings his friend along for part of it, but he goes about it first by giving everything up and becoming an ascetic, like a sort of monk who lives in the woods. Like he has no possession. He lives in the woods. He begs for all his food. He fasts for days and days and days and becomes like a skeleton. And basically, just by depriving himself of everything, looks for enlightenment there. But he's like, after a few years, he's like, what the heck, man? Haven't even found it. So he's like, maybe I'm going about this all wrong. Like, there's all these ascetics here. There's all these monks. They're called samanas
Okay.
in the
Yeah,
book.
I think you've described this before on the show. because I can remember the rest of the plot
Oh
now.
yeah. So what happens?
Because it's next that he decides, after he realizes that he can't find the answers in not having anything, that he goes and decides to have everything and becomes this like trading god.
Sex, drugs, rock and roll, pretty much.
But he's, surprise surprise, not happy there either. So he goes to this like cabin on a river that he's been crossing a few times with this boat driver guy who kind of ferries him around whenever he travels somewhere, or just kind of crosses people across the river. And he just decides to take that guy's job, and he finds happiness there.
He and this dude just chill by the river, and everybody thinks they're really dumb. Uh, but he just like finds enlightenment by just hanging out, living a simple life by the river. So I think that's sort of the exact message. Literally, just kind of, you know, just chill out.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. That is exactly it. I looked around into this like non-action thing, and I did see one good explanation on it, just on a website I found. And it's basically just says that this can also mean that when you don't know what to do nothing. Instead, only jump at opportunities when you feel ready.
That's pretty good too. The jumping opportunities thing could be arguable, but the when in doubt, non-action
Yeah.
is pretty alright.
Yeah, I think the second part works as well, because the whole idea is that by not taking action, you'll be doing everything, right? So I don't think he's inherently saying literally don't do anything. It's just that kind of this idea of, instead of living life, letting life live you. I don't know if I'm extrapolating too much, but it seems like it's kind of a live in the moment kind of message and just enjoy the present.
I mean, I feel like this whole book's about extrapolation. You sort of need to, because the actual words themselves don't give you a whole lot.
That's true. Yeah, I saw that on the Wikipedia page for it. There was a lot of intentional contradictions inside of it, just to try and make you think more.
There's these riddles I've come across that they are intentionally unsolvable just to make you like think about it, like just sort of these paradoxical riddles. It's sort of like that, yeah, because you think about it a lot, and in doing so, you think about a lot of other stuff. Okay, well, that's a pretty good start.
Yeah. So there you go. We're like half an hour in, and we've got through one section of the book. Very good. Love it. All right. What have you got?
Mine starts at chapter 3. Actually, there's a few lines in chapter 3 that are sort of like seem to go against like common knowledge or like commonly held ideas, which is being do not glorify the achievers so the people will not squabble is definitely one. Do not treasure goods that are hard to obtain so the people will not become thieves.
I like that.
Yeah, and so then it continues, thus the governance of the sage empties their hearts, fills their bellies, weakens their ambitions, strengthens their bones. Let the people have no cunning and no greed, so those who scheme will not dare to meddle. A lot of that seems pretty against commonly held ideas, at least around here. Well, around home. Like I think the thing that most people would have a lot of trouble with is empty their hearts, fill their bellies, weaken their ambitions, strengthen their bones, because so many people, our age especially, have like it's all about reach for the stars, like try to achieve everything you can in this life, be as passionate as you can in everything, like really follow your heart, do what you want to do. But then they're sort of saying here that just like be healthy and just sort of accept what you already have.
Yeah, I don't know.
As somebody who's quite ambitious yourself, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I can definitely see it from both sides, because there's definitely the angle of it that there is it, just like the one life. I mean, maybe if you follow a different religion, there are more lives, but
Yeah.
from my perspective, there is the one life, and you have to make
Yeah.
the most of it. But I guess it's also a question of, what does making the most of it mean exactly?
Hmm.
Like, it seems like the Tao Te Ching is trying to make the most of life. It's just what it talks about ambition. Its idea of what you should be focusing on is just different than our typical ideas.
What I've always sort of thought of this is like there's like two levels of achievement. There's like your ambition, what you hope to achieve, and your actual achievement, like what you really have. And you're happiest when your level of achievement is like at or just above your ambition, or arguably just below maybe. But anyway, around there. But I always thought like, so if that defines your happiness, just how close these two levels are, should you raise your ambition? And like common knowledge for us would say yes, you should raise your ambitions to as high as you can achieve them, as high as possible, and you can still achieve them. But going off stuff like in this book, it seems like you should just absolute rock bottom, and then you'll be super happy. Which I mean, like if you're alive and healthy and feeling fulfilled and satisfied with absolutely nothing beyond that, then I mean you would be pretty freaking happy. So it's sort of hard to argue with, but it's pretty hard to accept too.
I don't know, because I guess what's coming to mind here is kind of going back to the science of well-being and all that stuff, and talking about engagement and flow, because that seems, from what I can tell, to be one of the most important things in happiness, like being engaged and stuff, right? One of the keys to that is to be slightly kind of reaching above your level, is to be slightly more ambitious, like not too ambitious. I could definitely see like if your ambition is way higher than your skill level or what you're actually achieving. I know from actual tests that does not work out. That's just horrible.
Like if you the only thing you ever want to be for a career is an astronaut, but you're deaf and blind. Like that would suck.
Yeah, no, that would not work out. So you need relatively realistic things, but I don't really know how that works out when you just try and drop them to absolute bottom.
Like let's say instead of your ambition being 88 and your achievement being 89 or 87, what if it's ambition 1, achievement 1?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I can't there's no way in my mind that I can like think about that and think about that as like a worthwhile life or something that I would actually want, you know?
Yeah.
Like I can definitely see like living a peaceful life, like a pretty chill life. That sounds good, but I'd still want to do things. I'd still want ambitions, you know?
Yeah. I can sort of see how this intertwines sometimes with Buddhism, because Buddhism's thing, well, I mean, not their whole thing, some of their thing is that life is just sort of about reducing suffering, and like life itself is kind of suffering. So, following that train of thought, it is possible to just reduce suffering to the highest degree. And then that would, by definition, I guess, be the best life.
Yeah, I think I'm also having a hard time with this because I'm reading some Aristotle right now. I've been getting through the
Oh,
Nicomachean Ethics, and he is not about this at all.
no, he's not.
It's a very different idea. His idea of like the best life is essentially to be a philosopher. That's like peak that you can do in your life.
Well, I'm sick. So,
Yeah, it's hilarious too. His ideas on like reincarnation and what happens in the next life.
what's
Like
that?
essentially being a philosopher is like peak. Like that's the best kind of reincarnation you can get because you essentially just become pure energy and get to like talk philosophy with the gods all the time, like for the rest of eternity.
Essentially, heaven/nirvana.
Yeah, basically. Then everybody else becomes like various animals or whatnot, depending on like exactly what you did in life.
Well, that's pretty Buddhist of him, or not Buddhist. That's pretty like reincarnation. I guess like Hinduism of him.
I know, right? Like I was reading, this is coming from A History of Western Philosophy by Bertrand Russell, which is a great book if people are interested in it, in the topic of philosophy. And the Greeks were surprisingly into reincarnation, at least the philosophers.
Hmm. Which we usually think of as like very Eastern.
Yeah, very much so. Like they were still talking about Zeus and whatnot, but they were also talking about being reincarnated.
So they didn't rock with the whole like fields of asphodel versus like the isles of wherever, versus basically heaven and hell.
Yeah, it didn't seem like it because I think one of the reasons why Socrates was so chill when he was being put to execution was his, from what I can tell, his faith in immortality and the fact that he knew that he would just live on forever after he was dead, that he would be fine.
Because he's like, I'm a philosopher. I'm good.
Exactly. Yeah.
That sort of, I didn't know that. That adds a very interesting aspect to his whole execution story. Usually I'm like, what the heck, man? Why didn't you just leave and write books elsewhere? But if he's like, well, I mean, that would be a minor inconvenience, and I can just go straight to Nirvana heaven right now. Meh.
I mean, leaving didn't seem to work out too well for Aristotle, so maybe it was fine.
What happened to him?
He died like a year later. I forget exactly
Oh,
how.
just happened to.
Yeah, it just happened to. I forget how old he was.
Probably pretty old.
I mean, Socrates was like 70 when he was killed. So, like,
The ancient Greeks could live decently into their 70s.
yeah, some of them.
For the ancient world, they were pretty good.
That they were, like, surprisingly long lives. Anyways, but yeah, is there anything more that you want to say on that passage?
Not really. This just seems like I feel like most people I know would disagree with it at least a little, and that's why it's interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of these concepts, I don't know if it's just, it kind of seems like instead of trying to find knowledge outside or traveling to it, they want you to stay put. I think he says that at one point, that true knowledge can only be found by staying still in one place.
Hmm.
And then it's kind of this idea of like looking for internal knowledge. That's kind of what I was getting from it, which kind of ties in with the ideas of like meditation and whatnot.
When you say that, that's interesting because it on the surface sort of seems to disagree with, but sort of like when you delve in a bit further, it makes sense. In the same chapter, chapter 3 says the last bit is act without contrivance and nothing will be beyond control. So you're like, wait a minute, this isn't like a book about how to control everything. This is, I don't know what it's about. It's about the Tao. Sort of my interpretation of that, along with what you said, is that it's like if you control inside yourself, then that's all you need.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know if it would even put it that way because you don't want to express control at all. Like, I think how it talks about the Tao is that it says it doesn't control anything and so it controls everything.
Yeah.
So it's like by not actively trying to assert control over stuff, the natural way that things will happen, and that in itself is good.
Yeah, it seems to be like falling into the natural order and sort of old timey Christian, the natural order of things, feudalism and whatnot. Okay, what's the next one you have?
I've got one that I found actually seemed to be kind of in line with a lot of modern day thought, which I thought was kind of interesting. In chapter 64, it says, therefore, the sage desires what other men do not desire, and does not prize things difficult to get. He learns what other men not learn, and turns back to what the multitude of men have turned by.
What was the last bit?
And turns back to what the multitude of men have passed by.
That's quite interesting.
Yeah, he's just looking essentially for like undervalued opportunities.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, like just find the value in everything.
He's trying to look where other people aren't looking, which seems exactly like what the stock market and like real estate investors are constantly trying to do.
I mean, that's true. Or like art creators, filmmakers, entertainers,
Yeah, you gotta find your niche.
fashion designers, us.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's just generally pretty good advice to do things that other people aren't doing and to look at what they're passing over, both in what you're going to do and as well. I think he talks about, or he sends the same message towards like possessions. So like, don't go after possessions that a lot of people want, which makes sense because they're expensive. It's what a lot of people want. Don't value those things, value other things.
I think something else that I'm interpreting from this that I like is specifically the phrasing or like the meaning. Turn back to what other people pass by, because that's sort of a lot of people now. I'm sure forever, but I'm only alive now, so I'm going to say now. Um, sort of either fall into following along a lot with the main school of thought, like the main ideas, or just being deliberately contrarian to everything, which is still unoriginal.
That's true.
When you think about it, instead of just saying yes to everything, it's just saying no to everything. But this is just sort of like you're exposed to the same things, the same ideas and thoughts and stimuli that everyone else is, but just you can just think, like just try to think one level deeper, like try to delve in more and find what's really in there.
Good advice. Always look where other people aren't looking as much as you can, which as I say it out loud, I don't know how actionable the advice is or how you can actively try and do that, but I guess just keep your eyes open.
Or look in the same places, but look extra hard so you find things that other people don't.
Ooh, that's true. That's a good one. Look for the areas that other people either don't pay attention to or find distasteful for some reason.
That's a very, very interesting one. These are all pretty good actually.
Yeah, solid text. Surprising.
Man, those all those people really. It's a good book. Another one that's sort of to do with the. I suspect this is some sort of translation thing, either between Chinese to English or between archaic Chinese and modern Chinese. Is it's chapter 5, which is Straw Dogs one. I'm curious what your version says about this too, because I'll just read this one because it's very short. Heaven and earth are impartial. They regard myriad things as straw dog. The sages are impartial. They regard people as straw dogs. And then basically just like everything's empty, but that's fine. What the heck are straw dogs?
I don't know exactly. I managed to find an Urban Dictionary definition for it too. So I don't know. We can see if this applies.
What does it say?
It says in business, something, an idea or plan usually set up to be knocked down. It's the dangerous philosophy of presenting one mediocre idea so that the listener will make the choice of the better idea which follows.
Hmm. I feel like it might have the same root, but I feel like it doesn't exactly work here.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it exactly working either.
Sounds like it's related to straw man.
Yeah, it does. Here's another one. Something that is made only to be destroyed.
That makes more sense.
Yeah, actually, I think when I was reading it again, I think I thought it sounded like something like sacrificial almost. Like it's some kind of offering.
Huh. Yeah, so there's probably some sort of either ancient cultural or cultural meaning there that would hit a little bit harder than for us. Or maybe not. Maybe he just meant nothing.
They've got a lot more definitions. This one's good. Those who socially peaked in high school.
Straw dogs. That's pretty good. I mean, there sort of should be a word for that.
Yeah. Oh man, it has an explanation too, or an example. Chet,
Yeah.
the captain of the football team in high school, is now an overweight drunk who sells shoes. He is a straw dog.
Whew, feels bad. Imagine selling shoes. Easy to imagine being an overweight drunk, but yeah.
What the hell? Here's another one. Person who is faithful to the process of snorting cocaine. Someone who uses the inhalation of cocaine as the sole purpose of getting high.
Wait. The last sentence really got me. What the heck?
The purpose isn't to be high, it's the action of snorting.
Wow, he was really ahead of his time.
Yeah, seriously.
He'd been to South America, got some coca leaves, and he was like, "Whoa."
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if Urban Dictionary knows what's up, but there you go.
Yeah. I mean, what one or two were surprisingly applicable.
I know, right? Like maybe.
It seems like it's just something that's empty and doesn't mean much.
Yeah. Yeah, from context, that's what it sounds like.
Or they're all the same, because it just says that these things are impartial. They regard blank as straw dog.
I guess the point there that I would want to stress is that with these more ancient books, that happens a lot. Either like a
Mhm.
word has changed meaning entirely or a phrase, or it has like a slight change in meaning that really like changes the meaning of the whole sentence or structure. So it's really nice if you get like a really good copy of the translation that has lots of notes from the translator on like clarifying what they mean.
That's why I wish I had my original, because it did have that.
Ooh, yeah, those are so good.
I'm sure you had a lot to say about what a straw dog is.
Man, probably.
Anyway, so yeah, that was chapter 5. Interesting stuff. What else did you have?
Ooh, another one that I found quite interesting in chapter 28 was essentially it said, don't use excessive effort, extravagance, and easy indulgence, which was really interesting. I mean, it definitely fits with what we've been talking about, this not acting too much, the excessive effort, but I thought it was really clarifying or interesting to see it with extravagance and easy indulgence. Like he sees indulgence and extravagance on the same level as essentially workaholism. It's different, but it's still kind of an indulgence.
I mean, I guess you can, yeah, I guess it can be sort of on some levels because, for instance, if you have, let's say, the more hours you work, the more money you get. You can work enough that you're sort of like hoarding money. You can like have everything you need, and you have more than you'll spend. Like lots of people in the world have more money than they'll ever spend, but they still work because it makes them feel like they have a purpose or like a feel good feeling from like just achieving something, getting money. When it in the scale of your quality of life, past a certain point, once you've met that point, it doesn't do anything. It's like in the course, The Science of Wellbeing. Now, I might be getting this wrong because this was many weeks ago that I took this one, this specific bit, but the amount that your happiness increases from a pay raise is inversely proportional to how much you make.
Yeah.
So if you make $100,000, then a double in pay will make you a little bit more happy. But if you make $10,000, then a double in pay will make you very happy. So it's like once you meet the point that all your needs are met, then it basically stops making you really happy.
Yeah, no, that is definitely a good point. The way I was thinking about it was the explanation that I heard in The Courage to be Disliked, which was all about the Alderian psychology, was that workaholism is essentially an excuse. It's you trying to avoid your interpersonal commitments or your problems, basically in other areas of your life. So by indulging in your work, you're essentially either avoiding your family, your friends, your health, or something else.
Maybe even just like parts of your like emotions or thoughts, like just an avoidant personality in general.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that sort of gets back to the theme of like get to know and be fully in tune with the natural workings of your inner self instead of just like going crazy trying to achieve everything in the outside world.
With a lot of these ideas, I kind of flip flop a bit because I hear this, but then I hear some other positions, and I don't know if it's just you want to. It's like a dichotomy that you want to find a balance between, or not. Because, like I mentioned before, that true knowledge can only be found by like staying as still as possible and in one place. There's definitely that. I think that's probably good in terms of like meditation. But I forget the exact quote, but to paraphrase, I think it was Nietzsche who said something along the lines of, no thought that comes from reading a book is worth a damn. Only the thoughts that you have when going for a walk are actually worthwhile.
I quite like that.
It's not a quote, but it's something like that. Yeah.
Probably in German.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, I can definitely get down with that, where it's like books are written by somebody else, and you can agree with them and stuff, but like you're actually getting to know your world that you live in by going out and living it, and then getting to know who you are in that world.
I mean, I guess saying them out loud, it seems in some ways kind of similar because it's both like getting to know yourself to a certain extent, being at peace and in nature and all that stuff, but less about being completely still. I don't know if that's more metaphorical than literal.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I don't think he meant literally going for a walk. I think he meant just like in the world.
What, Nietzsche or Lao Tzu?
Nietzsche,
No, I think the Nietzsche one was actually about walks.
literal walk.
So I think it was specifically about how he would go walk in nature for like hours every day to like sort his thought outs.
Oh, I feel that Nietzsche. I mean, Nietzsche was like kind of a lad.
Yeah, from what I've heard, decent guy. So that one, I think it's literally about walks, but I don't know if what Lao Tzu was saying about staying in place as much as possible and being still. I don't know how literal that is.
Well, it's probably tapping into the same sort of thing, like tranquility,
Yeah, I think so.
calming your inner emotions, your inner world. Probably pretty similar result.
Honestly, probably, yeah. The more I think about it, they seem kind of similar.
I would say they're not contradictory because people do walking meditation. You have.
That's true. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, anyways, where were we then?
I guess I can do one more. There's a few that just reminded me of like Bob Marley and Bruce Lee
Oh yeah.
separately.
What is that?
Well, the Bruce Lee one is chapter 8, and I'm pretty sure this is because Bruce Lee was literally quoting the Tao Te Ching in an interview, just to do with like his martial arts philosophy and stuff. But it was just how the highest goodness resembles water. Water greatly benefits myriad things because it's that famous quote like "be like water." So that reminded me of Bruce Lee. I don't know if he was exactly quoting it, but he was probably familiar with it.
Probably.
And yeah, moving with great timing and handling with great capability, feeling with great depth, dwelling with the right location. Sounds very Bruce Lee. And the one that reminded me of Bob Marley was chapter 9, the right next one, which is holding a cup and overfilling it cannot be as good as stopping short. Pounding a blade and sharpening it cannot be kept for long. Gold and jade fill up the room. No one is able to protect them. Wealth and position bring arrogance and leave disasters upon oneself. When achievement is completed, fame is attained, withdraw oneself. This is the Tao of heaven. So the part that reminded me of Bob Marley was just like gold and jade fill the room. No one is able to protect them. Sure, these things are great, but if you get so much of them, then they're sort of useless. Or like you don't need loads of things. And when achievement is completed, fame is attained. Withdraw oneself. Just sort of wisdom is better than silver and gold, sort of thing, you know. But this also sort of relates to what we were talking about before, sort of ambition versus achievement. With the holding a cup and overfilling it cannot be as good as stopping short, which is sort of like saying holding back and intentionally withdrawing and having less is better than excess. That's how I interpret it. Maybe he's talking about literal cups.
Yeah, probably because it's definitely best to have less than the volume of your cup because you don't want like wet hands. That's not
And you
fun.
spill tea all over your hands and then you
Ooh,
burn
especially
yourself.
if it's hot. That's no good. That's no good
Yeah.
at all. I can definitely feel that in a lot of ways. But at other times, get the feeling that, throughout life or at different stages, sometimes you just need to get a bigger glass.
Yeah, that's a pretty good representation of your ambition versus achievement. If you have a shot poured in a beer mug, that doesn't look like very much. And you're like, this is nothing. But, if you spill hot tea all over yourself, it burns. So is it better to just have a tiny cup and fill it a little? Or does the cup size matter?
I don't know. I think, again, this kind of falls apart for me a bit when I think about, or when I bring in the idea of like flow and the constantly
Mhm.
like, if to engage in it, you want to be pushing yourself a little bit past your boundaries. Like maybe is it still the meniscus if it's going up or curving up?
The meniscus, like just the top of the liquid.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of like bowing down, if like when you fill it up, you know how it kind of domes a little bit when you have a glass like completely full.
Yeah,
Like I don't know if you could say that you want it at that point where you're like slightly higher than you are, but
just about to spill over.
I don't know, I guess the flaw in like using the metaphor would be that the cup can't grow, right? So it's kind of a fixed mindset metaphor if you really think about it.
It kind of is. One thing to remember is that this was still written by humans.
That's true.
Whichever of the stories you believe, either way, it was written by people. Nobody's claiming it was written by God. It is not infallible.
It's definitely not infallible, but at the same time, you want to let it lend it some credibility,
Yeah.
partially just because of how long it's survived and how many people have looked at it and still continue to look at it.
I feel like one of the great things about it is that because it's so vague and contradictory and stuff, it is just, yeah, sort of like a vessel for thinking about things. Because you can take many different conclusions out of it, but it would probably just depend on like what's sort of beneath the surface for you at the time.
Yeah, that's very true. You're only able to learn that which you're ready to learn. So, like, based on the context of your life and what you know, you'll be able to take away.
Different stuff. Yeah. Some of it's pretty black and white. Like nobody would come away from this saying, "All right, lots of money is the way the nature intended me to be." Like I don't think anybody's
I mean, if you read it as like, okay, this is a guidebook to harnessing the Tao and controlling the universe.
bro. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, you just need to go on some quick like ascetic journey and then you'll be able to like control everything.
Yeah. And then you're like, dude, Dr. Manhattan, who? This is so easy.
Seriously, yeah.
Anyway, I guess everyone who's listening, go out and read it. Just you can find it online for free.
Yeah, just Google the Tao Te Ching and you'll find a copy. Very easy to get.
You can read it easily in an hour. So
It is extremely short. One of like the most dense bits of knowledge that you'll find.
yeah, there's not much. I mean, there's sort of not much fluff, but it's kind of also all fluff. So,
Well, a bowl is most useful when it is empty.
dude,
Man, that's what this book is.
whoa.
It's a thing that allows you to like think about the stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's
It is a bowl that you are going to fill with your knowledge, Jesus, or with your thoughts on the subject.
I feel like that's 100% accurate.
Have I reached like the title of Lao Tzu?
We figured it out, lads. Yeah, this book makes you think. Well, we figured it out, everyone. You can call us if you have any questions.
We solved it.
Very good.
Yeah, it is a very good book. It's like you were just saying, very little commitment if you say you want to read it through. So definitely would
Yeah,
recommend.
draw your own conclusions. Maybe you 100% disagree with us.
Ooh, please drop a comment on, I don't know, the Reddit or something.
Yeah, and be like, you guys are idiots. You don't know what you're talking about. And we'll be like, yeah, all right.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that.
That's an upvote from me.
Ooh, maybe that means that we're really following the teachings because he said those who, the goal is to not know anything, and then you'll know everything.
Ah, but if you think we're following the teachings, then you think we know something. It's a trap.
Oh, you got me. Oh,
hmm
it all feels like a bit of a catch-22 at times.
It's like fair enough. No matter what, you're not that smart. Like, all right, that's a pretty good thing for most people too.
Which I mean, yeah, that's fair. That's accurate.
I can get down with that. But I think my brain has had enough for one night.
That's fair. Yeah. What time is it there?
11 or 15, I think, p.m.
Ooh,
But to everyone who's recently gone back to school and whatnot, good luck. You know, get big brain from this book.